નમસ્કાર વિદ્યાર્થી મિત્રો, વિરામ બાદ ફરી એક વખત આપનું હાર્દિક સ્વાગત છે. વિદ્યાર્થી મિત્રો, આપ જાણો છો તેમ આજે આપણે MA ઇંગ્લિશ અંતર્ગત MEG 1ની ચર્ચા કરી રહ્યા છીએ. વિષયને અને ચર્ચાને આગળ વધારીએ. આપણી સાથે વિષય નિષ્ણાત તરીકે અહીં સ્ટુડિયોમાં ઉપસ્થિત છે શ્રી RB ઝાલા સર. ઝાલા સરને વિનંતી કરું કે એઓ પરામર્શનની શરૂઆત કરે. ઝાલા સર.
Thank you. As part of your Unit 5 in MEG 1, that is British Poetry, we'll today discuss an age which has so many names and it has its own reasons. But primarily the poets that we are going to discuss in British Poetry section are Dryden and Pope. Dryden and Pope, both these poets have their names as the nomenclature of the age of Dryden and age of Pope. So they are the key poets or writers, if not poets, of the age. So let us look at the background of the age, and as I already stated that it takes so many names, the age of Dryden and age of Pope, and mainly the age of Dryden, that is from 1660 to 1700, is referred as the age where Charles II was restored to the throne, and that is why it is restoration period or restoration age, even marked in history. So restoration, as Charles I was beheaded, and for a short span of time, after a short span of time, the kingship, the monarchy is once again restored. And with this restoration of the monarchy, there are so many things that go into, and the major that is of our concern even while we think of literary studies, it is the split in the upper class and how the public life comes in focus, and the split is of the Tory and the Whigs. Even the writers are divided into the two camps, that is the Tory and the Whigs. So this is an age, that is age regarded or named as the restoration period or the age of Dryden, and later the age of Pope, and also has a name that goes with the Augustan period, and is an Augustan an age. And Augustan, as we know, takes the age also takes the name of Augustan, which is an age which flourished in art and literature in the reign of the great King Augustus. But here it is to go back to the times and to translate and go back to the literature of the times. And so to say, when we think of going back to, it is going back to the classical age, and so the very age is regarded as the neoclassical age. So in brief, if we take up these three terms, and if we would try to define this, not define exactly, but express as to what goes in with the restoration, the Augustan and the neoclassicism, maybe we would understand these writers and the work that we are going to study with these major writers that belong to the age. And there were giants, so to say, great writers of prose, and this particular age is also regarded as age of prose and reason. So reason in the sense enlightenment, and that goes after, or say in the later part of the 18th century. So to take overall account of one century from 1660 on, from restoration to say 1744, almost a century, and to look at the public and the political aspects, social aspects that influenced the literature, and it is the period wherein you will see that or we will mark that it is the public life that influences literature the most, or to an extreme that even the writers write with a patronage, and naturally with this patronage or being affiliated to one party or the other, all their literature is in a way political, or they take a stand and they write. So the works in discussion in this particular unit is all about this public life that Dryden and Pope lived, and all the writers were in one camp or the other. So to begin with, the historical background of the age, the Restoration period, which is 1660 to 1700, often identified as the age of Queen Anne, and in a way enlightenment. When you say it refers to the return of Charles II and the re-establishment of monarchy, and we may go back to 1642 when the theatres were shut down and English people were and the beheaded. English people themselves beheaded Charles I in on 30th June 1649, their monarch in London, and established a monarchy. With restoration of Charles II, the theatres also reopened, and so this stage which also flourished. So it is revival of the drama too. So once again, and this was with the direct influence of the French, that in England also you see a change from the dramas that was staged in the previous century or Elizabethan times, Shakespearean times, and with this drama we mark that Dryden is one of the major dramatists of the Restoration period, wherein it is the revival of, and of course rewriting of the Shakespearean plays and staging it with all the stage effects that were improvised or that came into being only in the Restoration times with the direct influence of French. For example, it is the curtains, the lighting that was part of stage now, and for the first time it is the women characters played by women, and also mark that it is Dryden who began as a poet and later on he contributed to the drama form for the larger part of his life. And thinking of the political aspects, when after the restoration of the princes, it is once again against the Christianity, that is the Roman Catholics and that or Puritans, and that is why it is the Church of England or the Anglican Church that comes to power, but the upper class divided into Whigs and Tories, which always were suspicious of the Roman Catholics taking over once again throughout the period of 40 years. And major event in that is the Popish plot, and that forms the major works by Dryden, and Absalom and Achitophel is one such example where the Popish plot is once again becomes the central. The Augustan age in English poetry coincided with reign of Queen Anne, that is from 1702, after 1700, that is after Charles II's reign, and the last two rulers, George I and George II, the first two Hanoverian kings. However, the Augustan is a name, as I have just told, from the Roman Augustus, who ruled Rome in the 27th BC to 14th AD, during whose reign Rome enjoyed literary eminence with poets such as Virgil and Horace and Ovid. England felt that the writers such as Addison and Steele and Pope and Swift it reads some elegance of eminence. So these writers had an eminence, or they were given such a place as the old classical writers as Ovid and Horace, and the works of Virgil, Horace, Ovid, and of course the Greek epics, they were translated in the same period by Dryden and Pope. So with the influence of this Roman classical literature, it is then regarded as the neoclassicism in England. The imitation of the classical model, to give you an exact definition of it, is the imitation of classical model which became a common phenomenon in English literature of this period. The classical influence came through France. The same influence also comes through France. And in case of dramas too, for example, All for Love is once again the revival of the Shakespearean plays, directly or through the same characters that influence the age. So of these three terms, that is Restoration, Augustan and Enlightenment, that we have seen, it is enlightenment that comes in the end. And this age, which is for the first time you will see, which is marked as the age of prose, it is also that in the same Augustan age we find the periodicals emerging, and by the end of the 18th century you see the development in the form of novel form, and people were coming up with or going ahead with the realistic fictional works. We would not go into the later times, but even if we consider the prose writers as Addison and Steele, who began with the, or who in fact came up with the Tatler and Spectator, and almost all the writers did contribute to these periodicals, and periodicals were in fact swaying and shaping the minds of the age during Restoration and Augustan period and up to Dr. Johnson. So this was in being, that is in making of literature. You find that periodicals played a major role, and it is through prose, and that is essays, or in as the writings in these periodicals, be it critical, be it social, and mainly it was reformist zeal in Steele and Addison, but the use and the grip over language is what is marked when we think the literary aspect of these works. And almost all over the century, that is from the beginning of the 18th century till the end, you see this influence of the periodicals that is stretched, and naturally the same literary editions were available even in the 19th century too, and how through these periodicals once again you have the novels also being shaped with this periodical publications of novels. Coming back to Dryden and his times, the major notable things about the times is that it is the beginning of colonization, or it is the time when the West had an interaction with the East just because of the process of colonization, and maybe the views, the way in which they came in contact with the other cultures and they adopted that in their lifestyle as well as in their thinking may have influenced even the Englishmen. So it was not a one-way process, so to say, that it is they who came as the ruler and civilized us. It is from these civilizations from Far East as India which has influenced them. And one very example of this is that the Englishmen took to drinking tea. So it is the coffee houses that started in the same age, and it is just a remarkable influence of our time, the times, that because of the contact there opened many coffee houses from which was imported from Asia as well as India. It is also when we think of the background of Restoration or early 18th century England, we cannot disregard the attitude of the people, and that is secularism and in society and politics that was taking place. And when we say secularism, and when we have just seen the reign of the Puritans and how England once again had restored the English church, it is through Pope's Black and Dryden that new philosophy and science is also addressed to in the works. Let us take the lines of John Donne, early 17th century poet, and what he thinks of in terms of the new philosophy. A new philosophy calls all doubt. So once again, in the times when it is also the times of Newton, and naturally the age which is more rational, which has something to do more with rationality than emotions. So it is anti-sentimental an age, and that is too true of the early 18th or halfway 18th century, and which is remarkable in case of the periodicals where sentiments have no space, and it is only the rational minds that are the thinkers that are coming and discussing things very rationally. But this is early in the 17th century when Donne says, and now philosophy calls all in doubt, the element of fire is quite put out, that is the faith which is put out, the sun is lost and earth and no man's wit. So reference to the astrological and astronomical developments, Galileo and all. The sun is lost, the earth and no man's wit can well direct him where to look for it. Now Donne was in fact regarding this loss. He was taking the whole thing, that is all the developments, people thinking, trying to think in every aspect of their social life with the advancement of science. He gives a mythical vision of it, and Dryden, when he borrows the same, he says, to lonely, weary, wandering travellers is reason to the soul, but affirm the reason's glimmering ray. So this ray or light which is put off, or which is mythically used by Donne, is once again in this case was lent not to assure or doubtful way, but guide us upward to a better day. So this is affirming their interest as well as affirming that it is science which will move them ahead, but guide us upward to a better day. Dryden's Moonlight, and when it comes to Pop, let us see, that is just 30-40 years later, the junior Pop who is highly greatly influenced by Dryden, and it is Pop who has himself stated that the greatest influence that he has, and especially in case of using the heroic couplet, was Dryden. Natures and nature low lay hid in night, God said let Newton be and all was light. So this is how the same the Bible reads once again as God said let Newton be and all was light. And of course later on, rejected by Black, this scientific vision, he says, may God us keep from single vision and Newton's sleep. So these are the different views, and different views when we think of the social background, that is how the mindset was shaping up in the 18th century with all the developments and especially the scientific developments, and with establishment of such a society of which Dryden was also a member. Regarding the court, it is that is after the social aspect, the political, when we go to the politics, it is the court which has now become central, and Charles too is regarded as a merry monarch, and all the pleasure for him was duty. So this was the times when the courtiers who were either Whigs or Tories, so these parties of the Popish plot and exclusion bill, because of the Popish plot, it is that once again even the rights of the Christians, and they were taxed more, in fact the Roman Catholics who were in England, and many of them who had fled to Ireland or other places. So this was something that influenced the mindset, the writers, the common people of the 18th century, and the corrupt politicians and courtiers. They also were very busy with reading of the works like Country Wife, and that talks of the taste of the times, in which the hero seduces a woman by pretending to be a eunuch, and all such satires of the time. So with this word satire, it's a word which goes with Dryden, the greatest of the satirists, Dryden and Swift and Pope. So the works that we shall study, or maybe we wouldn't have time enough to study them, but that we might refer in brief, are great satires, and great satires that needs a good understanding of the times, that is the political as well as the social background of the times. Almost all the writers, the way the writings, the satires are written are naturally political, and the aspect is to answer back, and as in case of Achitophel, that is once again Shaftesbury being created by Dryden, and the replies that were given through Maddell by Shaftesbury and the other politicians to Dryden, and it was a long continuous debate through these works, and this can best be understood if all these works can be studied as a series, or in a series, one after another, one answering, taking the other, and as a result the other writer who is in the other camp politically and naturally party bifurcations, we see that this is nothing else but attacking the other party. In the famous lines of Butler in Hudibras, which also will give us some idea about the society. What makes all doctrines plain and clear? About 200 pounds a year. This is what the status of the writers were, or poets were. About 200 pounds a year, and that which was proved true before, proved false again, 200 more. So this is how you could, or the writers had such a shortcoming, or were so much dependent on the court and the major center of power, that they were writing, or all their output was political. So there was court politics and politics in the city as well, and the rural politics. So the court was on the Tory side during the Restoration, and the city and re-entered the picture in the side of the Whigs. So most of the that also has a shift, that once it shifts to Tory and again it shifts to the Whigs, and see that politically it was forcing itself upon the attention of the writers who had made nearly 2 decades of concentrated amusing court. So Dryden, who was on the Tory side, and Shadwell on the Whig side. Shaftesbury becomes the political leader of the Whigs. Normal, and if you understand this combination or this party line of Tory and Whigs, you might very closely be able to read these works as to what these relations were and how stained they were with the Whigs and the Tories. The Poppy's plot revealed that Titus Otis divided man into political fractions. So Titus Otis is a character who was with the Protestants first, but then he converted to Catholicism, and once again he was in fact within the Catholic Church or the Roman Church. He was not given much importance, and that is why he returns to the other camp. So, and he comes and tells that it is the Pope has planned to murder the king. So when this came out, it is regarded as the Popish plot. And Titus Otis also becomes a character in Absalom and Achitophel. So this succession and reigning over the throne becomes central in all the works. And so good reading of Absalom and Achitophel will also give you a good understanding only if you have the historical background and also good idea about the party lines. Dryden and Defoe are either patrician or pleb, and Dryden and Defoe are examples of MacFlecknoe. And MacFlecknoe is an attack on Shadwell, the Whig poet. This is a work that we need to study in detail. Mac means the sun, and Fleckon had become a term in those days to term a lesser a poet, or lesser means very dull a poet, and this is addressed to Shadwell. And because Shadwell has already written or got a medal on his breast, and Dryden writes once again on MacFlecknoe, which is religious and political factions, which created the factions in both the camps, and society as a whole could not even think of bridging this gulf. The social dissociation of this type also brings out the psychological dissociation of sensibilities. So this is how political and religious satires were mainly written by Dryden as well as Pope. Dryden, if we try to think, we won't be able to go into the biography of Dryden and Pope, but Pope's biography is very interesting, and interesting in the sense that he belonged to the Catholic, or he was born in a Catholic family, Roman Catholic family, and because of that, because of the change of the power from Protestants to Catholics, or the English Church to Catholics, how it also influenced the writers and the protectors, and how Pope was too staunch. And one remarkable feature about Pope is that he was physically handicapped, or he was a man with a haunch. So the critics, who were great satirists, or as it was the age of satire, no one lost a chance to slash and the opponent. Here they went mean as to satirize or comment on the physical abilities of Pope. And so Pope's work that you'll find the references to this as to how mean people were, and how he also, as a result, to attack the same poets, is writing in a mode where the one by one all those who had come to him for little things, either for prefaces or for the endnotes and epilogues, and Pop had held them in one manner or the other, accounts them one by one, and also accounts his position. And if we have a quick look at the work, you'll realize that in the Satire and Epistles prologue, an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, advertisement, that is what the title is. And in this work you will find that Arbuthnot, of course, it is to pay homage to his friend, and this is in form of an epistle, and it is epistolary style, which most of the students will be most aware of. Epistle is nothing else but, in simple terms, it is letter, and this is in a heroic couplet and in style of a letter, where he pays or very wishes good of his friend, a doctor, and of course a scientist, Mr. Dr. Arbuthnot. But it is a satire, and what does he satirize here is the first few lines: shut the door, good John, fatigued I said. So this is what the state of the poet is, that is Pop is, that shut the door, good John, fatigued I said. And this John is the servant. He asks him to close the door, shut the door, and shut it to all the contemporary writers who were with him or came to him for one reason or the other. But further, tie up the knocker, shut and tie up the knocker, say I am sick, I am dead, to an extent that tell them that I am no more, I am dead. The dog star rages, nay it's past a doubt, all badmen and Parnassus is set out. So the satire, and in satirizing they could go to an extent to use a diction where you have these animals as dogs, or to calling the others, opponents, as dogs. The dog star rages and the past doubt, all bedlam and Parnassus is let out, fire in each eye and papers in each hand. Fire in each eye and papers in each hand. This is how the contemporary writers who are with him once and may not have been lifelong and change the camps are being lashed at by saying fire in each eye, so expecting something from him, and papers in each hand, so came with one thing or the other for him to write on, sign on. They rave, recite and madden around the land. What walls can guard me, or what shades can hide? They pierce my thickets, through my grot they glide, by land, by water. So in his big villa, that because then in the Augustan times, that is after the reign of Queen Anne, the Roman Catholics were not allowed to even buy their own property in the areas, and especially in London. So he had bought a house 10 kilometers away from London, and it was a big, beautiful house where people came, and they came by land, by water, they renew the charge. They stopped the chariot and they board the barge. So this is how, through in chariots and through barge, because he himself had owned or hired a barge or waterman, so to say, to go to London, and also a carriage. No place is sacred, not a church is free, even the Sunday shines, so Sabbath day to me. So this is how people came and obliged him for one thing or the other, day and night. And then the mint walks for the man rhyme, happy to catch me just at dinner time. And especially the mention of dinner time. So they were hungry people, even the poor writers who had come so that he would offer him a dinner. So this rich man, physically of course crippled, but who is all rich and who offered everything to the writers, and in his earlier days he had helped the new writers too, that is amateur writers also, and therein he had also, in case of his relation with Swift, which is also mentioned in the same work, the Epistle of Abernot, you will find that he had written a preface to Swift's work, and later on, and also given a good review of the play, but later on he despises it, or he thinks that all this that he had done for the different people, they are on that in that different camp. So is there a parson much bemused in beer, a model in potass and rhyming peer, a calf fordum in father's soul to crows? And it was age of age where everyone, from the ministers to the writers and common people, they took to alcoholism, and which is so true about the writers too. A clerk followed his father's soul to crows, whose pens the stanza when he should engross. Is there who looked for ink and paper scrawls with disparate charcoal round his darkened wall? And this is very natural of him to say that one who could not even afford a pen, or with a disparate charcoal round his darkened wall, all fly between an humble strain, apply to me to keep them mad to vain. Arthur, whose giddy son neglects the law, imputes me and my damned work the cause. And of course, the different opponents that are referred to, and not directly, but by creating them, or we can really mark them directly by the description of either their attire, or either a few very common announcements and references to their life. It's a longish poem, but within that, even the writing process or whatever he is doing all his life, he says that I have not been, or am I born just to come up with this word, or all his life that he has spent is just for the sake of writing, or has he only to take care of his friends and who are four now? And the poem ends with of course, with a prayer to his friend, and the doctor who had taken care of his health all his life after he met, and the same doctor was also the doctor for the the empress, that is Queen Anne, but he was out of service after the reign of Queen Anne. So this is how the political as well as the social aspects that influence these times which have got so many nomenclatures, and the influences, the major is the neoclassicism, and how the translation translation of Homer and Ovid especially, and also the fables of Ibsen are worth taking note of. But before we conclude, or before I end in the short time, is Alexander's Feast, or the Power of Music, an ode in honor of Saint Cecilia's Day. It's a longish title. It's an ode in honor of Saint Cecilia's Day by Dryden, and this is the last major work, ode by Dryden. And as we know that Dryden has practiced almost all forms of prose, poetry as well as drama, and even in the bulk he has given a lot um, on stage. So as a poet, these are his few last years, that is before 3 years of his death. He wrote this in honor of Saint Cecilia's Day, and this Cecilia's Day was celebrated by the Christians, and by now it is see how what a age of flux it was, that Dryden also converted a Catholic in his later days, or later last 2 decades of his life, and of course he had to suffer, but he changed, as T.S. Eliot would put it, that he changed with his times. And if he can really bear this change, then we can say that he was quite open-minded, open and very rational a mind, that he has changed, or he has converted himself to a Catholic. So in this work, especially Saint Cecilia's Day, we mark that he has written 2 such works, 2 odes, and that is in your syllabus, or in this particular unit you have the second one, and in this particular ode that is written in honor of Saint Cecilia. Cecilia is a musician who invented a musical instrument for the first time for the church, especially for the church. And all our old instruments such as drum and flute, and they are regarded as pagan and not Christian. So it is the first musical instrument invented by Saint Cecilia, and this is how this day is also celebrated in memory of this saint. And only a few lines that I would like to mark here is that Dryden once again takes in Timotheus, and Timotheus is also a musician who has a great influence in the mythology. Placed on high amid the tuneful choir, with the flying fingers touch the lyre. And in case of Timotheus, he says that trembling notes ascend the sky. So he is with the gods, a musician with the deities, and his notes that are sounded in the heavens, they descend, or trembling notes ascend the sky, they reach the gods, and heavenly joys inspire the song begun from Jove, who left his blissful seats above. And that is with one aspect of music where it ascends from the earth, and in case of Timotheus. And he has also used, Dryden has also used chorus in here to make it more musical, because he has taken up music as the central theme here, and chorus which adds to the music of the poem. And the first stanza ends with happy, happy, happy pair, none but the brave, none but the brave, none but the brave deserves the fair. So this is what musical note it has before the chorus, which also runs in the, or which is repetition of the lines that I just narrated. And in the grand chorus, that marks the end of this ode, he sings, "At last divine Cecilia came." This is how he pays homage to this inventress of vocal frame, the sweet enthusiast from her sacred store, enlarged the former narrow bounds. Enlarge the former, whatever was the in case of music, that is instrument wise, and even in case of music as a whole. So enlarged the former narrow bounds, and added length to solemn sounds, with nature's mother, wit and arts unknown before. Let all Timothus yield the prize, or both divide the crown. So comparing Timothus, the old musician, with the inventress, that is Cecilia. Let all Timothus yield the prize. So he was as great, and he has begged prize from the gods, and that is why it is the medal or the prize here that goes to Timothus in the myth. Or both divide the crown, or he says maybe Cecilia and Timothus, they can divide this crown. But mark this very important lines. And he raised a mortal to the skies. So this is what Timothus could do, that is, he raised the mortals to the sky. And in case of Cecilia, he says he raised the mortal to the sky, she drew an angel down. So this is how he sings of, or this is how the end of this ode is, that she drew an angel down. This is the effect of the music, that even the gods have to come down on earth. And maybe it is in words of Dryden himself, that it is marked as, or he also expected the popularity and acceptance of this poetry as one of his best works. And having lived a long life, and in the last few years, when he gets or he is happy, or he writes such a work, being a Catholic, and putting his views as to how to accept the music and music of life, and what is it to be divine, and how even the heavens can be brought down with faith. Or if you have faith, and if you have that determination, if you succumb to, or if you devote yourself to. And this is the Catholic view, or Roman Catholic view. So he was a real Catholic mind, and a great satirist, a great dramatist, and above all a great poet, along with the, Pop. And both of them, one who belongs to the Restoration time, and just the following time, that is the Augustan period, are the great pillars of the neoclassical times. Thank you all.
વિદ્યાર્થી મિત્રો, અહીં આપણો સમય પૂરો થવામાં છે, ત્યારે ઝાલા સર અહીં રાજકોટથી ઉપસ્થિત રહ્યા અને આપણને MEG 1માં જે પરામર્શન આપ્યું એ બદલ સૌપ્રથમ તો એમનો આભાર માનું છું. આભાર ઝાલા સર. વિદ્યાર્થી મિત્રો, આવતા રવિવારે એટલે કે 25 તારીખે આ જ સમયે આપણે ફરી વખત મળવાના છીએ, અને MEG 1ના વિવિધ વિષયોમાં જે ચર્ચા કરી રહ્યા છે એમાંના કોઈ એક નવા સબ્જેક્ટની ચર્ચાને લઈને આપની સમક્ષ ઉપસ્થિત થઈશું. હાલ આપણો સમય પૂરો થવામાં છે, તો સમયની મર્યાદાને ધ્યાનમાં રાખીને અહીં આપની રજા લઈએ છીએ. નમસ્કાર.